Welcome to the Sci-Fi Diner Classic. I'm one of your hosts, Scott Herzog.
And hello, I am Miles P. McLaughlin.
And we are fresh back from Shore Leave 34. 2 shore leaves ago, we had the distinct privilege of interviewing our next guest here. So this is an interview that was 2 years old. But 2 years ago, we had a chance of interviewing this guy. Who is this?
The great Edward James Olmos.
The great admiral himself, right?
And this was just a few months after Battlestar Galactica ended its, it was in its series. So fresh off that,
Fresh off that. And, again, we often go back to this, and you've heard us tell the story if you've been with us long enough, but he gave us this interview after a full day of signing autographs, speaking to people, and he was tired. And yet he sat down with us for 45 minutes.
I know. That was, extremely generous of the guy, but he's a class act. At conventions, my experience was if you asked him a question, it wasn't just a simple yes or no or one sentence answer. He'd give you a good, thoughtful answer. And so he was just very kind to give us that much time with this interview. It's a very, So a lot of it was Battlestar Galactica oriented because it was still, just right, the series had just ended. But we talked about his career in the past and
a little bit about Blade Runner,
and and so some of the social commentary Battlestar Galactica explores, and with things going on in the world today. So he it was a very thoughtful interview from him, and so it to me it's one of my all time favorites. I can't say enough good things about the interview and just what a class act I thought he was. Yeah,
definitely a high caliber of an actor and all around gentleman. And if you ever get a chance to meet him at a con, he was just phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so thank you again. We say thank you. That was Shore Leave 32, and we were so grateful to just have him there. And so we hope you enjoy this interview, bringing you without the news and the other stuff that we put into the original podcast when we first released this. In the, I guess when we were in the 70s back then, so 70 episodes ago.
Wow.
But we hope you enjoy our re-release of this interview, and Edward James Olmos.
Hello, sci-fi fans. This is Edward James Olmos, better known as Admiral Adama, and you're listening to the Sci-Fi Diner podcast. Welcome. Don't forget, this is the best podcast on the internet. So say we all.
No one should feel obligated to join this mission in any way. This is a decision I have made for myself. If it turns out that there are not enough personnel to crew Galactica, I will lead a Raptor assault with anyone who is willing to join me. Let there be no illusions. This is likely to be a one-way trip. So don't volunteer out of sentiment or emotion. There is a line running down this deck. Volunteers, move to the starboard side. Everyone else to the port.
Ladies and gentlemen, when it comes into your mind when you hear great movies like Blade Runner, Selena, Hollywood Confidential, or great TV shows such as Hill Street Blues, Miami Vice, and one of my favorites, Battlestar Galactica, I'll just name a few. Well, what should come to your mind is not only an award-winning actor, but a director, producer, activist, and all-around gentleman, the Admiral himself, Mr. Edward James Olmos. Mr. Olmos, welcome and thank you for taking time to speak with us on the Sci-Fi Diner podcast.
It's a pleasure to be here with all of you.
Well, we're certainly delighted to talk to you. I got some questions from some of our friends on Twitter. I want to ask you, how did you land a role of it was Gaff in Blade Runner?
I was doing a play on Broadway at the time called Zoot Suit, and one of the producers, Katie Haber, had seen me perform and told Ridley about me, and so Ridley called me in, and they offered me the role.
Great. Now, last year at Con, this is another one of our friends on Twitter, you had alluded that there was a connection between Gaff and Adama. Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, if one sees the entire show of Battlestar from the beginning to the end, and you get to the very end, the last moment, mm-hmm. the show brings you from a period that you don't really know you're in until, bingo, you find out in the very last sequence that you're 200,000 years before humankind the way we know them today, right this second, because it ended in 2008. Mm-hmm. And that's what the show brings us up to, present day. And if you take it there, you'll see Six and Baltar walking down Times Square. Right. And Six says to Baltar, this has happened before, it's going to happen again. And Baltar says, well, maybe this time we've learned, And then the show goes to black, and that was the end of the show. And if you get Blade Runner right there and you put it in, that starts in 2019, just 11 years later. And you see how much we've learned. Right. And you notice that Gaff is a direct descendant of Adama. Same genetic structure. They even look alike in some ways. It's amazing.
It is.
It's uncanny. Except that the guy's a lot younger than Adama. Right. Still, it's kind of like, you kind of feel like maybe it was a younger Adama.
It's been a few years. I'll have to pop in Blade Runner again.
Yeah. You'll enjoy it.
I will.
Especially if you're really into Battlestar. Because when you're into Battlestar all the way and you feel that world come alive to you, and then all of a sudden you jump into this world here that we live in right this second. Yeah. Only in the future. And just like, boom, you see what happens. Right. And it's amazing how well it's stuck together. It was uncanny. Well, I don't think that Ron Moore had any idea that it was going to connect in such a profound way when he cast me in the role. I don't think he was leading in that. I don't think that any of them really thought about the connection between Battlestar and Blade Runner, even though Battlestar had some images that would immediately you would remember Blade Runner and say, wow, I remember that. Slow turning, cylindrical fans, and movements of that kind. The beautiful Lotus Six coming down the walkway of the opening segment. Just bingo, you just immediately think of Blade Runner. Right. So you have that world that no one had ever stepped into. Battlestar stepped into it from the very beginning. And just walked through that door, kept on going. That was one of the things that Ron Moore and I, and David Icke, and Michael Bryan discussed immediately. I told him that I really wanted to go into that world, and because nobody had ever gone into it. I said, why not us? Let's take advantage of it. And so we did, and that's what ended up happening. Is that we connected, and profoundly, people 100 years from today will understand it better than they do right now.
Interesting.
Right now, the guy says that, it connects. Oh, okay. That's how I take it. But inevitably, my work is going to be looked at in a body of work. And people will not look at it in perspective of somebody saying to them, they should see all of this and get to that. They will have been into this world, and they will see that world, and they'll put it together themselves because the same actor, all of a sudden you just put it in as if it's part of the show. Just, this is what happened. So you see that Adama takes off, and his genetic structure continues it.
Sure.
Bingo, and 200,000 years later, Adama is Gaff, the top, the Blade Runner.
Right.
The only Blade Runner in the movie.
I'm going to have to watch Blade Runner again.
You'll be so happy you did.
Yeah.
It's, a lot of what you're saying here, there's a lot of social commentary in Battlestar. One of the things that I know I've appreciated about Battlestar, and I know when we talked to Richard Hatch, that one of the best things about Battlestar is that it comments on society, talks about it, but doesn't necessarily say you have to believe this. It opens it up to explore the questions and explore the possibilities, but not necessarily give you a right or wrong answer. And I think that makes some of the best sci-fi. I mean, you're challenged to think for yourself.
I think so. I think it does. And as long as you don't indicate or, make people, manipulate them so that they all feel the same thing.
Right.
You're allowing people to have their own objective feel about what they're doing here. And that's what happened in the show. I said it today in the panels that we had. I said that the audience had a profound effect on this show, like no other show in the history of television had ever had. Meaning that because the advent of the internet, the advent of Twittering, of blogging, the advent of Facebook, what happened was that the show's writers would write the show. Then the production crew would get the script, which was already at one very high level, and augment it to another level by putting wardrobe into it, putting sound into it, putting the acting into it, putting the camera work, the directorial, understanding of the script, and brought it to life, and it augmented it, brought it to a higher level. Then we passed all of that on to the post-production, and post-production then added all of their special effects, all of the music, all of the scoring, all of the sound, wall of sound effects, and editing, and just elevated it to a much higher level than even the production could ever have imagined. Mm-hmm. Then they put it on the air. And the moment that someone saw it in whatever regions of the planet, it was passed over television to them, they immediately downloaded it. They immediately put it on the internet, and they sent it out. So people who saw for the first time, say, in a part of the United States, maybe who got it before another part of the United States, or maybe in the case of the very first season, England got it first. They used to get it a couple of days before we did in the United States. And so they got it, and as soon as they got it, somebody put it on the internet. So people here were watching it almost simultaneously. It was uncanny. If you were really into computers and you knew how to make it work for you, you were getting it almost to the moment because somebody was downloading it right at that moment and feeding it. And so therefore it was, the moment that it finished, somebody was watching it already and getting close to the end in some other part of the world. Then the blogging started, and people started to talk about what it meant to them. Mm-hmm. Not what the writer was trying to say, but what the show meant to them. And they took it to a much further. They saw into this, oh my God, the combinations of ideas that came out of the audience was unprecedented. Oh, this means this and this means that. And oh, no, because if you remember back, this is much more in the case of this is happening. And pretty soon, the writers were on their blogging with them saying, well, in some context, I never wrote it in that manner, but I can see what you mean. So all of a sudden, the show got augmented to an even higher level. Then the writers went back and started writing for the next shows from that level. Not from the level they started writing the show originally, but the augmented level that had gone on, including the blogging and the constructive creative criticism done by everyone that was watching it on the planet. I'm not talking about just one segment or one group. I'm talking about some people who had never watched sci-fi got involved. And they would blog, and they found the blogs. And people talking to, Bear McCreary about the music. It made Bear understand better his music, and the writers understood their writing even better. So all of a sudden, this became a very hands-on, interactive piece of work that we'd never had before.
The fans invested themselves into it.
And we took them on the legit. We turned around and the writers said, yes, you're right. And they wrote from there. Mm-hmm. They didn't say, yes, you're right, and then, well, that doesn't matter. That's not my idea, so I'm going to only go with my ideas. No, they didn't do that. Mm. They did what really secure, creative people do. Somebody says, 1, 2, 3, and the creative mind goes 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And somebody goes 9, 10. And the other one goes 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden you're to 16, where you would have never got to 16. It was just, if those two elements had not been put there. So that's what happened.
I remember Rolling Stone calling Battlestar Galactica the most intelligent show on television.
I remember that. I remember Time Magazine, they said it when the world started. Mm-hmm. Critics adored the piece. Mm-hmm. Yeah. They really found a voice that was speaking clearly to issues of terrorism, to issues of abortion, mm-hmm. to issues of, suicide bombings. Mm-hmm. By the time you were done, you were thoroughly confused as to what... You understood why suicide bombers do what they did.
You could sympathize with them.
Not sympathize, you understood.
Uh-huh.
Right. Didn't mean you were sympathetic to them, but you understood why they were doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't like a suicide bomber, no matter if it's for the right reason.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's just not my way of understanding this kind of life that we lead. It's too short. So basically, it's been a very, very difficult journey for humankind. I mean, Roslyn, everybody hates, this conflict that we have between right to life and right to choice. Mm-hmm. I mean, it causes, so it's like a right to bear arms.
Right. It's very polarizing.
Very, very polarizing, and it's very, very difficult, complex issue. Mm-hmm. Immigration, very complex issue. Mm-hmm. Some people try to make it very cut and dry, very simple.
Yeah.
But when you really get down to it, they're so complex, the issues, that we can't answer them. Some people say, I can answer it, and okay, that's how you feel, got it. But guess what? There are people who don't feel like you feel, so guess what? It's now become very complex. And therefore, you have your way of thinking, looking at it, and that person has their way of thinking about it, and then how are you going to resolve the issue? And most of the time, you resolve it with violence, and that's the problem. That's why we were invited to the UN.
I know, I was going to ask you.
They're reconciliatory people. They reconcile. They want to be able to get the Jew and the Palestinian to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
They want, the Taliban and the, everybody else, the Christians, to sit down and talk. But it's pretty impossible. It's a very difficult conversation.
It's ambitious, sure.
Yeah, so that's what we took on, and we didn't answer anything. All we did was hold a mirror up to the society that was watching the piece, and they had to deal with it themselves. But it made the people who were very, very honestly confused or had a strong sense of balance completely flip, because the Cylons had the one God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not humanity.
Yeah.
Okay, bingo, right there. You say, what? Oh, yeah, that's what? Wait a minute. They were,
Well, another thing I appreciate about Battlestar Galactica, as opposed to a lot of other sci-fi shows, was spirituality. It wasn't saying which way.
Baltar was hated, but then you started to realize what Baltar was saying was what Christians have been saying since the beginning of Christianity.
Right.
Then you started to say, oh, shit, wait a minute. Is this guy the devil? Is this guy, the bad guy who's talking, through both sides of his mouth? Or was he really believing in what he was saying?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It really explored the complexity of faith.
Yeah, and it wasn't like you were given an answer to this.
All right.
You had to deal with Baltar every week to try to figure out if he was legit or not, if he really meant what he was saying, or if he didn't. And if you didn't hold on to your head, you'd pull up the wrong conclusion.
Right.
I mean, at the end, when they go walking through it, and the whole situation of this reoccurring dream in the opera house comes to play, and it comes to play in the middle of the opera house, which happens to be, the main control center of the Battlestar Galactica. Just everybody was going, what the hell?
Right, what's going on? But if I remember, I listened to Ron Moore's his commentary on his podcast, and he said it was just serendipitous that just kind of worked out.
I think the whole show was serendipitous. I think it was like the happiest thing that ever happened to everybody that watched it and everybody that dove into it on all levels. You ask the camera department. You ask the wardrobe department. You ask post-production. You ask, the actors. You ask, SciFi, the channel that helped create it. They'll tell you flat out. This was one of the most extraordinary experiences we've ever had. Some of it didn't like it at all, didn't like the experience, but they couldn't renege the fact that something happened that has never happened before. Whether you liked it or you didn't, you had to hold on to your hat, because this was really a monumental way of getting together with a whole lot of different people and creating something that really will last the test of time. Long after, The Wire has been played, and long after, 24 has been played, and long after, Deadwood, and all the great Lost, all the great shows that we've had, 100 years from today, people will look at this piece of work and find something resoundingly, human, that just allows you to say to yourself, wow, these people were really confused. Boy, oh boy, they were really doing that. That society was doing that. I mean, don't forget, this was all post 9/11.
Yeah.
So the mental thought of everybody on the planet was changed. So all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute. Right. So, all I can say is that I'm proud to be a part of it.
Starboard! Jump the ship!
All stations report, sir. Connect me just to the ship.
This is the Admiral. Just so there'll be no misunderstandings later. Galactica's seen a lot of history. Gone through a lot of battles. This will be her last. She will not fail us if we do not fail her. If we succeed in our mission, Galactica will bring us home. If we don't, it doesn't matter anyway. Action stations. Start the clock.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark.
Is there one episode or a couple episodes that maybe stand out to you?
The first episode was true. The kiss of incredible love for what we were doing. Ron was, the first one was 33. And when we dove into that, it had been a long time after we had done the pilot. The miniseries was actually maybe almost about maybe a year before we got into doing the first show. And the very first show, 33, just threw you right into the world in such a way that, man, you never left. Boy, if you saw the miniseries and you enjoyed it and you went to episode 1, you were hooked. It was over. It wasn't like you kind of said, well, I think I'll just kind of go through a couple more of these shows and that'll be it. You were stuck. And it was stuck for the good and the bad of it, because, we didn't really get our legs until, towards the middle to the end of the first year. Then we kind of got our balance, and then by the second year it started to grow. And third year was, you couldn't stop it. Fourth year, you just wanted more. And then, at the end of it was the fourth season, but it was split into 2 seasons, became the 5th season, 4.5 season. Became, which is the last 10 shows that we did. Became, we just didn't want it to stop. And that's why everybody felt the pain. Everybody that was in the movie, that was in that world, when they split up, everybody wept. Really, you had to be emotionally moved. There was no two ways about it. And you didn't have to maybe shed tears, but you sure in the hell had to think about what this whole experience had been and where you ended up. You had no idea that you were 200,000 years before the existence of this planet. I mean, what? Where? Well, we'll call it Earth. Oh, yeah. That's how Earth got its name.
That was a clever way to do it.
That was really good. It's just like studying, they're looking at, humanoids walking down the earth. They don't even have, some of the tribes have language, but we don't know how far advanced they are in the language. Others don't yet have language. They had barely, succumbed to some of the basic fundamentals of understanding. And I gotta tell you, these guys the writers were fantastic. Mm-hmm. They had a good time, and even they suffer now. We said it from the beginning when it started to move. Instead of meetings with the entire cast, and sit down in my trailer, and we would talk about, this journey, and it was pretty evident that it was so well constructed. You could actually, you felt and you knew, and everybody thought it was just incredible that we were able to, I was able to actually chart out what was going to happen, including the lack of understanding by the artistry in the community of our own actors. Very few people saw the program. That's why we never got an Emmy. I mean, we got it for special effects, so obviously they had to give us something because makeup and special effects were really doing great work, as was the sound department and engineering, sound engineering, and so they got the technical awards had to come because of the impact of what we were doing. So they all saw it, but I don't think that the actors took time to watch it. I don't think they did. I don't think that we got any time. The writers got nominated, but none of them ever won. And so you knew that people either didn't like it in the industry, or not enough of them watched it. It was interesting to see how that went. It went to, and I pretty much predicted it, but what I couldn't predict was the Peabody.
Right, I remember
the George Foster Peabody. That surprised everyone. That was like, I remember when Bonnie Hammer called me, and she was emotional, very emotional. She was crying. She says, "Eddie, since 1985, I've been trying to put out the finest documentaries that I could, the finest usage of this medium that I could, in hopes that somebody would recognize it. Maybe we could earn a Peabody through one of our, many programs that we did on humanity, and we've been trying to create, that I have been trying to create, as well as creating commercial pieces of work." She said, I was really trying to grab hold of the integrity of what it means to win a Peabody. Mm-hmm. And never could. And I'm calling you today to let you know that we got one. I got a Peabody from Battlestar Galactica. And she was really emotionally moved. It was amazing. And when we went, we were all very proud to go. It was just, it's unusual, very unusual that you got that kind of, because what the George Foster Peabody means is really indicative of what you said at the beginning, what Time Magazine said, what people were saying about the show, that it was a very strong usage of great usage of the medium. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Peabody does. It goes around the world and looks at the way different people are using electronic media. And they say thank you by giving them the highest award that they give out. And so they'll go to Russia, they'll go to Europe, they'll go to Africa, they'll go to Latin America, they'll come to the United States, Canada, North America, and they'll look around and they'll see what the best shows are that are being played on television and radio and now on the internet. And they then say to them, this is the best of this year. This is the best of the radio and television and internet on the planet today. Here, boom. And that's what they've become. the University of Georgia, and the George Foster Peabody, is now become the Academy Award or the Emmy, but to world usage of electronic media, and that's the most prestigious award you can receive on the planet for usage of the medium. So when we received it, I was touched very much. So.
Yes, sci-fi shows don't often get
none had ever gotten that
the credit they deserve.
Ever.
No, it was good.
Ever.
Yeah.
None of them ever got the Peabody.
Right.
So sit back and go, interesting.
What inspiration did you draw from to give life to the William Adama character? Did you use any historical military men as inspirations, or did you,
No, I just took the reality base of what we experienced in my life and in the life of the people that we read about it, and just played the facts. That's it. And then I found the music which really helped me out a lot, because that made that world come alive to me. I had to find a way of making it different. And Diva Pramal, her music, her mantras, the album of Essence, really became the calling card for me to be able to really step into this world and stay there. I never left. To this day, I still play her music, along with Barry McCreary's, scoring. Beautiful music. If you've ever seen him do it live, you'd flip out. His live performances of the BSG Orchestra are unbelievable. People who have gotten the opportunity to see him perform live have just been so overwhelmed. It's fantastic. He's great. And all the musicians that played on that music play with him live. Wow. And so the entire orchestra is there. I think it's about 18-piece orchestra. Wow. And it's fantastic. It's great.
He's incredible, right? And I see that he just won a award for Human Target, or was up for Human Target as he's writing.
Good.
So he definitely...
he'll go on to be one of the great composers of all time.
He's got a good career ahead of him.
Yeah, he sure does.
Now, I've read that some of what you brought to Battlestar Galactica was a little bit of improv. Can you give an example of maybe you scripts it one way, and then you kind of may went into a different direction?
I think the most drastic one was at the very first day of filming. The "So Say We All" speech was probably the one that got most recognition for that kind of behavior. In which I remember the producer, David Icke, holding up the telephone to, as he had Ronald Moore on the line. Ronald Moore was in L.A. and we were on stages of Vancouver, at the Vancouver studio, and we were doing. And they wanted it was written so that I would be standing next to the spiritual leader, our spiritual leader. Right. And she was going to speak, and then I was going to speak right after her, and I was going to stand at a podium. And I said to the director, I said, it doesn't feel organic to me at all. It doesn't feel like I would be there at that point. I think that it was the end of the movie. It's the beginning of the journey. We shot the very last scene first. And the first time we ever all worked together. I think it might have been even maybe the first or second setup scene of the show that we were doing. So this was it. So I improvised the location that I started from, and improvised my walking through the bodies that lay on the ground, and where I started, and what made me move, where my movement came from, why I was going from point A to point B, how I was pushed into it, and how I was shocked by the lack of hope that everyone was exhibiting, and how, knowing full well that the future of humanity rested in our hands right there, this few thousand people that were stuck on Battlestar Galactica because we didn't know. We had a ragtag fleet, but it wasn't as large as it got to be. Mm-hmm. And we were less than 50 ships then. We didn't know how many ships were still working and still out there. But we knew that we were in trouble. Mm-hmm. We had no idea if there were still people alive on the planet. We found that out later. But so it was just a really difficult moment in time. And so the So Say We All was not written the way we brought it and used it, and David Icke held the phone up and says, "You won't believe this." To Ron Moore, and he held up the phone as I was screaming, "So say we all, so say we all, so say we all." And it wasn't written like we all say it 3 times, building with enthusiasm across it, bringing about this incredible feeling of triumph at the end of it, giving people, through this cohesive, collective unity of spirit, our hope that would drive us into the rest of the movie. And believe me, that So Say We All speech became the Shakespearean moment of the piece.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
absolutely.
I got it. I was like, everybody was kind of almost numb, and Adama had to wake everybody up, smack everybody in the face, so to speak.
Yeah, similar to that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I had chills when I was hearing that.
Oh, all of us. I mean, when we saw the piece and when we were doing it, people didn't know that they had to repeat after me. It wasn't said that everybody says, so say we all. And then he repeats it with stronger force and says, so say we all. And they finally, first there's 3, then there was 12, and then there was 50, and then it was hundreds, No.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't written. And so when it was done, the entire crew and the actors stepped into that world. Mm-hmm. Everyone stepped into that world. Everyone. Mm-hmm. PAs, everybody just sat there and just like, oh, mackerel. This is amazing. Yeah. And from that moment on, they changed the course of the direction of the piece. And we used it a lot. We used improvisation. Not that we would improvise to change the context of the scene. Mm-hmm. No, it was just to make the organic growth of the scene become honest to itself. So it's just the moment to moment to hold.
Right.
So that people knew where they were at all times. I remember the first time that I directed Time Me Up, Time Me Down. And what a difficult show that was, because we were caught with a really difficult journey. And where Ron wanted to go, it was different than what the studio wanted to do, because the studio saw that we were losing certain aspects of the clarity of they wanted it lighter. They wanted it to be more so that people could see it and women would like it. And it was getting too dark by the 8th show. My God, we were fighting each other in boxing matches, and it was going crazy. So I think it was the 7th show, I think. I think it might have been the 9th. And they wanted a comedy. Battlestar Galactica, the comedy.
Right.
We were like stunned. I remember when the word came down that we were going to do a comedy. I said, I went to the producer and said, if you're really going to try to do this, and I'm going to direct it. We can't let this get out of hand. There are ways of being funny without ever losing where we are.
Right.
So let's just do that. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's what we want to do. Okay, then let me direct it. And so I took over the helm and I directed it. And that was there was some great moments in that. Just hysterical, but they were so sad.
Yeah.
Sad moments, but they were so hysterical because that was the great scene with when Ellen comes back and she's found and she comes back and I bring her back to the Battlestar and there's Ty standing there and he sees his wife and he thought she was dead and we don't know how badly alcoholic they were, but they were really like rubbed each other to the point of where they became one in alcoholism. Right. They were just like, when they were together, they just drank it to annihilate it. So they're drunk out of their minds, and I invite them over for dinner. And, Ellen's playing with, Lee Adama's cock with her foot underneath the table. Mm-hmm. And, I told her, I said, I want you to put your foot right on. What? She goes, yeah, I want you to stick your foot. You'll be leaning, you'll be sitting there, you'll act normal, but I want you to put your foot in. And Lee didn't know it was coming. He didn't know it was coming. He just
talk about organic.
Yeah, I'm not kidding you. I mean, she just put her foot right on it and put it on there. And, and I had the camera set up. And to catch the reaction, I didn't catch the moment where her foot went on there because I would have given it away. But I caught what happened to him. I got that on camera. So sure enough, he was just stunned. Boy, when we hollered cut, he started laughing. The whole place was just hysterics. And then of course I told her to grab his ass when he bent over to pick up her shoes. And he says, here it is. And so a lot of the sexuality, right, which wasn't written in Pete's, but it lent itself to this really incredible feeling about this woman. And oh my God, what a disaster this is going to be. I mean, not only do we have these people out in space, but we have now this, and everybody thought that she was a succulent. And lo and behold, right, she was the fifth. Yeah. Nobody knew it at the time. And we actually started believing that she couldn't be, she was too human to be a silent.
Right. What was so great was that she, yes, she was this kind of a train wreck of a character, but then when she gets brought back, it's like she's still Ellen, but it's like she knows what's going on. She's intelligent. You take her, you take her seriously.
After Revelation, she's a real serious train wreck.
Yeah,
she really was. I mean, I love the scene. I told her, the production designer, I said, I want to have the ship, like, if it's really messed up, so let's be constantly working on the ship, because it should look old, because at first it looked kind of new. I said, it shouldn't be new. Portions of it, the museum would be new, because it's refurbished again, but the rest of it would be just really worn out. This thing that was an old battleship. It wasn't a new battleship. It was an old one. Put into retirement. And the day the film starts, it's into retirement. And it's becoming a museum. And so, I said, we'll have scaffolding all over the place for people repairing stuff. And I want to have Ellen climbing in the scaffolding and playing with Ty when she comes in and want to wrap her legs around his face. Pull his face right into her crotch. And they'll go, what? And so I go, how are you going to do that? I said, just put me some scaffolding, we'll figure it out. And sure enough, I told Ellen, I told Katie, Kate, I want you to jump up on the scaffolding and wrap your legs around his face, and I want you to put your crotch right into his face, And she goes, oh, really? Yes. And you guys are both wasted on your mind. You're coming into the party. And because I needed Baltar to come and see this. And that's where we got the whole face-on-face coming out, where Baltar's looking at them. And then all of a sudden, right out of Baltar's face, I put the angle so that Six's face comes right out of his face. And you go, wow! All of a sudden, out of nowhere, he's standing there, and all of a sudden, her face comes, whoop, and there's a little bit of front of his, and then you go, oh my God, out of nowhere. You're looking at it. It's done in real time. It's not a special effect. Right. And they're, Ellen had her legs around. It's a wonderful scene. Beautifully done by these actors. So good. Man, Kate Vernon was just a brilliant artist. And they just went to the wall. And she was brought in. Her first scene was the drunk scene where she comes in at the very end of the movie. the very end when we're all standing there hollering at each other. Really difficult scene to do. Another really funny scene, but it was situational funny because of the situation. It wasn't funny because we were acting funny.
Just timing, I guess.
Yeah, timing and situation. And it became really hysterical. And, so anyway, we ended up doing that. And that all of those things, like trying to put humor into Battlestar was really, really very delicate, very difficult, because you couldn't break the reality of what we were trying to do, or what really these people were undergoing.
Right.
Never forget it.
Well, tell us a little bit about future projects. Is the Green Hornet, you in that?
I have the Green Hornet right now that's coming out in January, 3D. Seth Rogen's playing the Green Hornet, and it's a wonderful. I mean, people. I've been turned on to some of the negative responses to some of the things that people are thinking about the show. They haven't seen it yet.
Right.
But I saw that. I think a lot of us have seen the trailer now. They realize it's going to be a lot of fun.
Oh,
it's going to be a lot of fun. And I think Michelle Gaudry, the director, has done a wonderful job. Of course, people are always pessimistic and sad.
Yeah.
That's how they are, and that's great. They're pleasantly surprised.
I saw the trailer. I
loved it.
I loved it. I mean, I definitely want to see it.
Yeah, me too. I do too.
And your role in it is a reporter that's investigating who?
No, I'm the old time. I've been with the newspaper for 45 years.
Okay.
And I'm the head of the newspaper. And the Green Hornet's father owns the paper.
Okay.
And so the Green Hornet, Seth's character, is a very wealthy, spoiled little kid.
Oh, yeah.
And we start off at a very young age. How he became the way he became. It's so funny. It's hysterical. The kid that played it was just fantastic. And anyway, it goes on to you really get to feel the how he got to be who he is, how the Green Hornet got to be the Green Hornet. And it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun. And this Cato, done by Jay Cho, is Bruce Lee played Cato on television in 1966. They did one season. And then Bruce didn't want to do it anymore because Cato doesn't talk. Cato never talked. He was always very quiet. He just went in there and fought. Whenever the Green Hornet would get into a problem, Cato would step in and boom, kick the shit out of everybody, and then would not say a word. And then Green Hornet would say, "If you guys ever do this to me again, you're gonna come back in and even do it worse to you." He didn't do anything. That's the humor.
Right.
But in this case, this Cato never stops talking.
So it's a juxtaposition.
It's hysterical. Cato has a big mouth, and he's constantly telling, the Green Hornet what he thinks. And so it's really funny. I think people are going to enjoy it. I mean, there's always people that are not going to like anything, but, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it's a fun ride. It's a real fun ride, and people are going to have a fun time. That's all.
When's that going to come out?
I think in January.
Okay.
Yeah, it should be out in the end of January. It should be
good. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us.
You're welcome.
So much life.
It's a rich continent. More wildlife than all the 12 colonies put together. Just looking for a quiet little place for that cabin. Maybe a garden. I don't have much of a green thumb, so I hope that you do.